Hey everybody, I'm Sam Webb, and this is Shopify Dev Tips. Today, we're starting off right where we left off from the last video about static sections, and now we're going to talk about dynamic sections. So a dynamic section is just a section, but instead of it being static on the page, it functions as more of a reusable component. Now sadly, dynamic sections can only be used on the home page, but they're still really important to understand, so let's get started. So back on the home page, we'll see this section here that we created last time, and I'll link that video in the description. But what we have are these three H1s that say hello world, goodbye world, hello world, and they're statically placed above all of the other content on the home page. And so this is the code we wrote last time, and what we're going to do is convert this into a dynamic section. For starters, let's go back to index.liquid, and we're going to remove this section tag here. So this section tag is for static sections, so we're going to get rid of that. And what happens is dynamic sections are automatically injected on the page through this content for index tag. And then another thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of these blocks, because for this specific section, blocks aren't really necessary. Now this is actually really important. What you see here is we have an error that says that this new schema is incompatible with the current settings value. So let me add this back to the index just so that we can demonstrate. But currently, if we go into heading, we have these blocks. And so if you try to make a change to a section by removing the blocks, but you still have data that's associated with those blocks, this is how you run into that error. So what we have to do in this case is we have to first remove these blocks. And then we can save it. And now if I go back to the heading and save that again, if we're looking down at the bottom, now we're not getting that error anymore. And now I can again remove this from index. And back to the theme editor again, you'll see that we don't have that heading anymore here. So now the question is, how do we convert this static section into a dynamic section? And it's actually really easy. We just need to add a new property to the section called presets. So if I put this comma here, we'll do presets. And presets is an array, so let's make an array. It's going to take an object. And for presets, there are really only two required fields. There's name, so we're going to name this heading, and category. And this is so that while you're building a bunch of dynamic sections for the home page, you can categorize them so that they show up in a similar area. So we're going to call this text only. And now back in the theme editor, at first you won't see anything different, but if I click add section here and I search for the category text only, we'll find heading here. And if I click that, it now gets added to the page. I'll select it. It says hello world, and I can change that to goodbye world. And we'll see it positioned on the storefront, right? It comes after this sales section. And it's the same over here. So if we wanted that to show up back above it the way we had it before, we would just drag it up above it. And again, this is now a reusable section. And so what we could do is add section again, scroll back down to text only, add another heading that says hello world. That's fine. Again, move that one above. And now we can replicate what we had before, or we could have a heading, then the sale, then the goodbye heading. And so now we have them split. And we can add as many of these headings as we want by just going to add section and selecting that heading. And this is generally how you would use a dynamic section. It's mostly the same as a static section where you have these two areas, right? You have your HTML section and then you have your content definitions. You connect your content definitions or these different settings to your actual code by using section.settings, or if you want to use blocks as well, you could do that. And really the only difference is this presets property. Now these are the only two required fields for presets, but presets can take more information, and presets actually does two things, which is that it places it as a dynamic section, but presets also do something else to where you're able to add pre-selected content for these sections. Now that will come into play more so if you're building themes for general use, and not so much if you're building custom websites for clients. But if you wanted to learn more about that, I'd advise you to go to the documentation. I'll link it. But in here, I'm just going to do a quick find for presets. I'm going to click this so it'll take me down to that section. And this will explain everything about presets and all the different things you can add to it. Now, one last thing, referring back to the previous video about static sections, I also added this section to the product page, and I added it like this, like it's a static section. And like I said, dynamic sections only work on the home page, but you're able to reuse it as a static section for the rest of the site by adding it in this way. And so if we go back to the product page, you'll see that we have Hello World up here and we have heading showing up here. And in here, it shows up in a similar way to how it showed up on the home page when you clicked into the section. But this data here doesn't actually reflect what's on the home page. This reflects it as almost like it's a separate thing. It's a static section, which is separate from its dynamic counterpart. And so if I change this to something else and I save that, right? If I go back to the home page and refresh this, you see that we still have Hello World and Goodbye World, but if I click on this product, we have something else. So you're able to reuse dynamic sections as a static section on other pages, but just remember the limitations of static sections, and that's how it will work for the rest of those pages. And so that's really all there is with dynamic sections. They're not really much more complex than static sections. You just have to add an extra property called presets and its two required properties, and then you have a dynamic section. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time.